The fire is already burning by the time anyone thinks to question the ground beneath their feet. The sailors have been at sea for weeks. When land appears solid, still, and crusted with what looks like sand and stone, they don't hesitate. They anchor, they climb up, they start cooking. The smell came first, something in the water, faintly sweet and wrong, pulling the ship toward that stretch of coast without anyone choosing it. It wasn't random. The ship didn't just drift there. The back is barnacled and rough underfoot. It doesn't shift, it doesn't warn them. Then the heat reaches something deeper. The creature dies, without violence. It has a name in the old texts, Aspidochelone. No teeth, no attack. It simply descends, and the ocean closes over the sailors like a door being shut on either side. It has no fixed length, only scale. Something large enough that its spine becomes a coastline, its hide mistaken for earth. The back is as rough as sand. A smell releases into the current just to warn you of the possibility. One of the oldest records of the sea describes it plainly, written in the Mediterranean world long before maps were even reliable, not as a story, but as something that definitely exists. Some believe it was a whale, a body so still that it became land. But that doesn't explain the smell or why ships kept finding it. They didn't argue about what it was, they just wrote down what it did to the people who stopped on it. The tracks don't make sense. A hunter following the ice edge slows, then stops. The prints ahead are wolf, deep, wide, heavy. They cross the ice in a straight line, cutting toward the water. And then they end. No blood, no struggle, no break in the ice, just the last print at the edge, clean as a cut. No one treated this as a mystery. It runs the land like a wolf, patient, territorial, built for distance. And it hunts in the water like something else entirely. Along the Arctic coasts, they called it Akhlut. Fast and coordinated, a dark shape moving beneath the surface, keeping pace with a kayak without ever breaking through. Never both forms at once. What people saw was always one or the other, the tracks in the snow or the movement below the water. Never the crossing itself, never the change itself. The name in older use was simple. It meant killer whale. The rest came later, built from things people saw but couldn't explain. One of the earliest records writes it down, not a story, just something that happens when you're too close. The tracks still appear on the ice edges of Alaska and the Bering Sea, and they still end up in the water. Whatever crosses that line doesn't leave evidence on either side. The water looks calm, too calm, the kind that makes experienced sailors lower their guard. Ahead, the sea folds inward, a wide, quiet inlet forming where there was nothing before. Fish crowd the surface, thick, easy, enough to make any crew change course without saying it out loud. They steer toward it. The mouth is already open. In the old Norse texts, it has a name, Hafgufa. It doesn't chase, it doesn't rise, it just waits, releasing something into the current. Not visible, not violent, but enough. The fish begin to turn. They gather. They then pour inward, drawn as if the water itself were pulling them. The boats follow the fish. And when the space is full, when the inlet is no longer water, but a trap, it closes. No struggle, no warning, just the surface of the water sealing over as if nothing had been there at all. What few accounts remain don't describe a creature in full. They describe the ocean behaving incorrectly, a coastline that wasn't there, a stretch of water that holds too still, something so large it stops looking like life and starts looking like geography. The oldest records recorded in the northern seas around Norway and Iceland don't even question it. They just list it as something that exists in the northern seas the way that storms exist. Some have tried to explain it. Massive whales feeding at the surface, coordinated movement. Fish gather in numbers large enough to distort the water itself. But those explanations describe a moment. The texts describe something that stays. They speak of two, and never more. The bay turned red. Not at the edges, not gradually, the whole of it, surface to depth as far as the eye could reach, flushed the color of an open wound. Fishermen on the shore of Uchiura Bay watched it happen and didn't move toward the water. They already knew what that meant. Something had risen, The Ainu called it Akkorokamui. The Ainu didn't speak of it as a creature that attacked without reason, it just dominated. The bay belongs to it the way territory belongs to an apex predator, not through constant violence, but just through presence. Ships that pushed too far into open water found their hulls gripped from below. Not even rammed or capsized, just held. Tentacles wide enough to span a vessel's length, pulling downward with the patience of something that had never once needed to hurry. What it looked like in every account is consistent. Massive, red, many-armed. The color isn't incidental, it bleeds into the water around it. The bay itself changes color when it moves. It's tied to a real place too, Uchiura Bay, Hokkaido. The Ainu named it, mapped it, and built their understanding of that coastline around its presence. Later, as Japanese mythology absorbed the tradition, the creature was carried forward, reshaped but not diminished. Some accounts record that it could also heal, that people came to it deliberately with offerings, asking for something back. Whether that made it less dangerous is never made clear. The bay still turns red. Locals have explanations. The Ainu had a different one. The dock is empty. It wasn't a minute ago. No sound, no splash, no struggle. The man standing at the water's edge, close enough to reach down, the way fishermen do without thinking, is simply gone. The others turn around, and there's nothing to explain it. Along the Bering Sea, some call it Tizheruk. Just the water, flat and dark, and the space where someone was just standing. The Bering Sea doesn't announce danger, it hides it beneath still water and broken ice, where visibility collapses and sound carries too far. Along these coasts, the Inupiaq spoke of something that didn't hunt in open water. It worked the margins, the narrow inlets, the docks, the places where humans felt certain enough to stop paying attention. It was never seen as a whole. What witnesses described was a head rising first, long and narrow, then the length of the body, then a tail ending in a single flipper. The rest stays below, not because it was distant, but because it was already close enough. It didn't chase food, it waited for the moment attention slipped, then moved without disturbance through water too shallow for anything that size to have been there at all. Here, the record becomes uncertain. The documentation is thin, thinner than the other creatures in these waters, recorded later, traced through fewer hands. Whether it belongs to an older tradition or something that accumulated more recently is a question that doesn't have a clean answer. What remains consistent across the accounts that do exist is not the creature's form, it's the quiet and absence it leaves behind. A person at the edge of the water, then nothing. Then the sea was unchanged as if it had never happened. The water catches fire, not with flames that spread, with something that moves across the surface, vast, unnatural, touching the shoreline before anyone understands what they're seeing. By the time it reaches the village, people are already sick. No wound, no cause, just bodies failing, one after another, as if something passed through the water and didn't stop there. No one sees what brought it. The old songs don't describe a shape, they just give it a name, Iku-Turso. They describe what happens: fire on the seas, illness without reason, ships that vanish without storm or warning, pulled under by something that doesn't reveal itself. It doesn't arrive the way other creatures do. It appears at the edges of events, when something has already begun to go wrong. In the Finnish Kalevala, it rises during one of these moments, not to attack, not to hunt, to be spoken to. The hero doesn't fight it, he speaks, and the thing answers. Then it's gone again, sinking back into the water as if it had never fully surfaced. Nothing about it, none of the stories stay consistent except the pattern. Where it appears, things go wrong, things break. The name is older than the stories that even use it, older than the epic that recorded it. It doesn't belong to one form or even one event. It just belongs to what the sea becomes when it turns against you. Not something you see, a happening, something you survive, if you're fortunate. If you enjoyed these myths, check out the next story on screen. It's just as unbelievable and just as fun. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you there.